We are live and on. Well, good morning, Prescott, and good Friday to all. I want to start today with a public service announcement from my friend Peter Walter, who is involved with the Veterans Appreciation Dinner, which is on Saturday, April 27th. 2 shows, 5:30 and 7 p.m. at the 180 422 West Gurley Street across from the Charlotte Hall. RSVP is important. It is a catered dinner, and veterans plus 1 guest. No donations will be requested. The show has the Andrews Sister Tribute, singers, and our 6 mini museums. I'm reading this, as you can tell. It has memorabilia from World War II and other different theaters and wars. Again, the RSVP is crucial. Please call 928-910-2207. Again, 928-910-2207. We certainly want to support all of our veterans out there, and we appreciate your service. So there you go. If you're interested, that information will be on our Facebook page. So today, Prescott Talks, Good Friday. At the keyboard, we have Lynn Lemaster, our editor-in-chief. So if you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and type those in, and we'll get them answered as soon as we are possibly available. And today, our guest, Patricia Bradford, with, and I need to put this right, Parents of Addicted Loved Ones.
Yes.
Good morning, Patricia.
Good morning, Glenn.
Got the butterflies kind of working out a little bit? Good. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming in. And the first thing we always like to do is start talking about who you are and how you got involved with, and the acronym is PAL.
Correct, PAL. PAL, Parents of Addicted Loved Ones. And my husband and I facilitate a PAL group every Monday night. We got involved because we have a son who is an addict. And we actually met the executive director of PAL, who is Kim Humphrey. They're out of Phoenix. He and his wife came to a recovery group that our son was participating in and shared about PAL. PAL is a support group for parents. Mm-hmm. It's quite a vicious cycle, up and down, a lot of crazy living, torment, and anxiety, a lot of anger, a lot of emotions when you're going through something like that. And we heard about the group through them, and they shared about what types of things PAL would do for us. And it's like, oh, sign me up. I want to do this. And I just felt called to be part of their program. And before I even had been to a PAL meeting, I'm like, I want to do this. And we've got an extensive program that's been developed starting out in 2006. Mike Speakman, he is a licensed substance and abuse counselor who founded PAL in 2006. And I'm not sure exactly when it was that he turned it over to 12 volunteer parents. And I want to say that might have been in 2013, but that the parents took over, and Kim Humphrey became the executive director. So you're going to have to ask me some questions.
Oh, I will. So you joined this group.
Correct.
And then you decided that you and your husband would have people come over to your house. Is it at your house, or is it at a facility that you all meet? But this is kind of how it evolved for you.
Well, actually, because the organization is a faith-based organization, they like for us to find a church that would support us. And so we meet at a church, and I just started going around town to different churches, and this pastor just about jumped across the table and said, yes, we'll do it.
Oh, great.
And we are not even associated with them in any way, except they allow us to come every Monday night and have our meetings there.
And what church is that?
And that's the Alliance Bible Church. It's on Iron Springs Road, 2601 Iron Springs.
Fantastic. And then, yeah, that's... a lot of the churches will definitely host those type of events, and it's great that you were out there to make that all happen, you and your husband, and it is a passion. And As a father of an addicted one, I understand it completely. There's a lot of times when we just don't know where to turn as parents.
Exactly.
We don't know what to do. There is no, and I always use this word, there is no code for this. I wish I had the code, but I don't. There's no manual. A lot of times we just, as parents, stumble through it, and it's great that we have groups like yours that can at least voice and express our concerns and allow us to vent some of our frustration, because you hit it all. I mean, it's anger, it's frustration, it's unknowing, and it's scary.
It's a lot of fear, yes.
We don't know what tomorrow will bring.
Exactly.
And sometimes it will bring happiness, and sometimes it will bring sadness.
Right.
So, and it's great that you have a group of people that sit back and at least talk to each other and understand what that feeling is like. Now, do you have counselors there?
No, we don't have
normally,
counselors.
Or is it just like...
It's just parents. And so when we start a PAL meeting, I'm quick to introduce myself and to say that, hey, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor, I'm a parent. And we're coming at this through the experience of others and through the curriculum of PAL that's outcome-based curriculum, effective outcome-based curriculum. And we come together, like you said. We have an educational component at the first part of our meeting, and then later we have a time to share if people want to share, and if somebody wants to offer a suggestion, because we don't give advice. And like you said, nobody has the corner on this market.
Right.
If there would be a lot of billionaires out there if that was the case,
For sure.
because this is a huge issue in our society.
So if somebody needed to speak to a counselor, do you have like the resources to do that, or does PAL have the resources, or how would that work if somebody needed help as far as professional counseling now?
Well, our founder, Mike Speakman, has always said that getting therapy for ourselves and for our loved ones is definitely a number one priority, along with participating in a group like PAL or Al-Anon.
Right.
And so, no, I don't recommend a therapist. I don't have therapists. I know some therapists in town, therapists that I've actually gone to myself, but that's not what we're there for.
On a personal level, you know who they are.
Right,
It's kind of like
right.
me, being part of a lot of the rehab buildings and as a chairman of the rehab on
And the
sobriety.
same thing with rehabs.
We get a lot of people coming to me and say, where should I send my person? I have a situation. Do you have a recommendation? And, I wish I did. I wish I had the golden snowflake that could help them. But I do. I refer them to people who I know that probably can help them. I don't have that, in my wallet or a keyboard or anything like that. I just give them a
Exactly.
name. So I understand what you're saying. I really had another question for you. I started rolling and I forgot all what it was. This over 60 thing, anyway. Great. So I want to continue on with, it really bugs me when I forget about these things, but the mission, how many people do you have usually?
Well, that kind of varies, and that's okay. My husband and I have been there every Monday night for 4 years, and we could have anywhere from 25 people or to maybe 2 people come.
Yeah.
And we don't mind
Yeah.
because everybody needs help, and even myself, it's like, not that I've attained a goal and got it all figured out. I certainly haven't, and none of us do, I don't believe. I believe that it's a journey that we're going to be on for the rest of our lives. And myself, my addiction, my drug of choice has been fixing my son.
Yeah.
And that has been a horrific thing, and to coming to terms with that and understanding about codependency and enabling. And that's what PAL has done for me. Ever since you called me the other day, I've been thinking about this. And last night I woke up in the middle of the night and it just came to me. It's like PAL's been to me like Toto was to Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Toto pulled back the curtain, and and the lie was exposed. There was the little man barking all these orders
Yeah.
and pretending to be much larger than he was and had control of her life. And that's what it was when you're dealing with addiction. Those things had, being codependent, my son had control of my life. If he was down, I was down. But the reality was I had it right there under my feet, just like Dorothy.
Yeah.
You know, I had the power, but I needed someone to come along and to speak truth to me. And that's what PAL does.
And give you that realization.
Yes.
Exactly.
And empower me with
Yeah.
truth. And when you're involved with an addict, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. There's a lot of deception.
Yeah.
There's a lot of manipulation. And you get caught up in it.
Yeah.
And you don't know where to go. And you don't know who to believe. And they're your children.
Yeah.
You love
You
them.
wanna- you
no
want to
matter
believe them.
how old
Yeah.
they are, they're your son or daughter.
Yes.
And you love them.
Yep.
And you want to believe everything they're telling you.
Yeah.
And this is what PAL does, brings to the program, brings to us is truth to help you break through all the deception.
And what you're saying right now, it is very important to people whoever might be listening right now, who has an addicted loved one, is to start these programs early. You don't want to wait till, months or years after the addiction starts and it just continues to snowball. There's things that people can learn at your meetings that will help them in their life and in their struggle. And just like you, give you those realizations that, there are things that you can do to help yourself. And when you help yourself, you're also helping your loved ones.
Absolutely.
It's like, when you're well, you can help that other person. Even if they're arguing or fighting against you, you understand it and you recognize it.
Right. And yeah, you turn that around. If you're not well, the chances of them getting well
Right.
are much lower
Yeah.
than if you're well. It's like when you get on a plane and they give you the spiel to put the oxygen mask on yourself first if you're traveling with a small one.
Yeah.
If you're not well, you certainly can't guide them.
Right.
And that's what I've learned to do in PAL is to be a cheerleader, not to be the coach. Because
Gotcha.
I'm not the coach. He's an adult. Our son is an adult. And, can I back up for a minute? You said something about finding out at different ages about these kinds of programs and this awareness. I wish that when our children were growing up, we shared with them. My husband is a rocket scientist. He is
Literally.
a scientist to the nth degree. And he would talk to our children about not doing drugs and gave them those messages that were being talked about in that day and age. But what we didn't know is that this is a genetic disease. It's a disease and it's genetic, and that 10% of the kids out there can have this. It's a crapshoot. For kids to experiment with drugs, to me, it's like playing Russian roulette because you don't know if you're an addict. And until they can get that fine-tuned to where they can give you a blood test and know whether you are or not, it's a very huge risk that they're taking, and it's not something that I take lightly. And it saddens me very much to hear people in school talk about, that's just who they are, and it's just their age, and they're just experimenting.
Yeah, I understand totally. We see that in ancestry. There's a gene sometimes that is passed on. You have an alcoholic within the family, and then there's somebody who might be susceptible to become an alcoholic. It goes with the family. And I could get into a real long conversation about experimentation of other drugs. Including, for my son, it was marijuana. He was 16, 17. It was easier to get a hold of marijuana than it was alcohol, and that was his gateway. So I don't want to get into the types of drugs and the gateway. That's a whole nother conversation, but it certainly is one that we'll be having quite soon here on Prescott Talks. I'll be having some guests come on about some of the gateway drugs and how they get there. But we want to focus today on the parents and the loved ones who, now they're there. What do we do? How do we handle that? And what's our recourse? And I think that our recourse, in my opinion, again, as early as possible. And even, if you start sensing this, and there is a sense, you don't want to believe it, no, not my son, not my daughter, this can't be happening. But if you start sensing it, reach out to groups like yours.
Right.
And we'll put all the information, how to get a hold of PAL, and talk to other parents and understand where they're at. A lot of parents come to me and say, gosh, if you had one thing to do different than that now with your son, what would you have done? And I say, lock that medicine cabinet up. I mean, this is something that I learned. I didn't know this when it was happening, but the doctors would give them pain meds when they got in a car accident. They gave him pain meds, and I gave him the vial to administer to himself. Well, I mean, hello, what was I thinking? So anytime there's any kind of medications or anything like that around the house, and that includes medical marijuana, you don't want that around, because kids are, questioning what's this going to be like, and next thing you know, you have a problem on your hands, especially with youth and
well,
young
and you bring
adults.
up a really good point, because you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Well, when it's not in our realm of experience, we're not thinking the way they think.
Right.
And we don't have a clue what they're doing with cans of aerosol to get high, or cough syrup, or what do you call it, quercetin, those kinds of things that can become hallucinogenic. I mean, things that are perfectly legal that they can be using right under your nose. I mean, we had no idea, not until our son got into rehab the first time, which was 6 years ago, did we have any clue that he had been drinking and doing drugs since he was 12 years old.
Yeah.
And we weren't bad people.
Yeah.
I worked in the church for 15 years. I was there every time the doors were open. My husband had a great job and was doing whatever he could to protect the United States through the military.
Right.
And so it's a shock. It is a shock. It's a huge shock.
And again, Pat,
you're powerless.
You and I have a lot in common, because I was the same way. The first time I took my son into rehab, and I'm looking at the list of things that he did, I went, holy cow.
Right. Where was I?
Where did he get that?
Yeah.
And how? And,
right.
Why didn't I see that?
Right.
I mean,
and you feel, because of that, you have a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guilt, and there is a huge amount of shame.
Yeah.
Where was I? What was I doing?
You feel like a failure.
Yes, you do. You there is so much shame, and there's so much guilt. And that's what's so important about PAL, because PAL brings hope. Because you get into a meeting and it's like, hey, I'm not the only one in town that's dealing with this.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking before we started about our perception about people that did heroin or illicit drugs, that they were just the low life of the community. We were not the low life of the community. And we were just ill-equipped to handle this. And also, with dealing with my background, I came from a very long line, after looking at this and going to therapy, very long line of codependent people and enablers. And that's something that I had to work out and come face to face with and let go of.
Yeah.
And
well, I think there's a lot of, again, you kind of feel like there's a shame involved.
Absolutely.
And, you're kind of ashamed to even bring it out at first, and as you recognize it. But the one thing about addiction, and in today's world, is it's going to come out. Sooner or later, you're going to find out.
And
the
that's
old
right.
days of sending Johnny to grandma's house in the Midwest somewhere to dry out, it doesn't work that way anymore. We're in a whole different era. So it eventually rears its ugly head, and then you're faced with it one-on-one, and how do you handle it? And again, we all handle things differently. We all handle it in our own ways. But boy, if there's a support group out there, and again, and I look right at you guys, if somebody is struggling with this problem, please reach out to somebody and talk to them, whether it's PAL, whether it's Al-Anon. I know Doug Dolan over at Recovery in Pines has support groups for parents who are have loved ones who are addicted. You need help. You need to catch the cat by the tail and get involved right away and find out what you can do so you have a little bit of power over this thing, because I'm going to tell you, you are powerless.
Absolutely.
You are powerless to it, and you're emotional to it. You have emotional strings to it, and you really need the help. So please, whether it's with Pat's group or Al-Anon, like I said, anybody, please get help. And if you're addicted, if you feel that you might have an addiction problem, again, same thing. You need to get out there and seek help and understand. And I know this is very hard for addicted ones to understand how much you're affecting your family and how much it affects your parents, your loved ones, your brothers, your sisters, and people that are around you, because they all love you and they want to support you. But again, the power comes from the parent.
Absolutely.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And when you say you're hopeless and powerless, you use the word powerless. When I started going to Al-Anon, that's where the first thing that I learned was you didn't cause it, which as a parent, you feel like you're responsible for everything. You didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it. Mm-hmm. But in PAL, we like to say that you learn the fourth C, which is how not to contribute to it. So because we have kind of contributed to it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And maybe not every parent has, and more power to those that are out there that haven't.
Right.
But a lot of us have, and unknowingly, certainly not willingly participated. This was not my dream for my son to be addicted. And I certainly would have done some things different if I would have had a clue that he was dealing with this disease. It's like I'm a borderline diabetic, and it's something I struggle with all the time. And I certainly wouldn't have been shoving that way of life in his face.
Sure.
Anyway, it's
a
lot to learn, but there's a lot of information out there, and it's support. And that's the key thing, that we're not alone. You feel so alone. Right. And so with PAL, you can attend a meeting at our group. You can attend a meeting. Right now, I think I stop and think, we are in 43 states, 45 states, no, 34 states and 145 meetings in the United States. So we're branching out there, and the word's getting out. Like I shared with you earlier, there was an article in December's issue of Money Magazine about PAL and our organizer. So what are some tools for not contributing? I'm getting a question here. Yeah. So some tools for not contributing. Well, like I said, we have lessons. We have a educational component. So like, for example, one of our lessons, we're looking at caregiving versus caretaking. So I always thought it was a very admirable thing to be a caretaker. But when you begin to look at the, what do you want to call it, just the attributes of a caretaker, well, a caretaker is fixing the problem and protecting and rescuing and controlling. And the difference between a caretaker and a caregiver was encouraging them. Like I said, being that cheerleader, not that coach, not giving them directions. And when I'm a caretaker, I'm taking away their ability to mature and become an adult and do things on their own. I'm taking away their dignity by not allowing them to stumble and fall sometimes. Right. And I asked a young man who had been a recovering addict for 4 years, and I said, so, hey, in all the young men that you work with in recovery, what's the common denominator of those that you see that succeed? And without hesitating, he said, those that don't have a safety net, those that don't have parents that are bailing them out of every situation. Yeah. And that's what I did as a caretaker. And so in going through these specific lessons, we're seeing what's real, gotcha, what's not, and what's appropriate, what isn't appropriate. And
that's a big question too. Again, as somebody who's lived with this situation before, do I throw my child out? Do I not? How far do we not enable them? And then when I did do that, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, where are they? Are they okay? I mean, it brought more guilt to me, and my son was like, hey, I was fine, man. I was living underneath a Joshua tree somewhere, and
Right,
life is
right.
good. And, and I'm sitting there at home with my eyes wide open, worrying about what's
Exactly.
going on. So it's like, there's so many, like you said, there's so many emotions and so many roller coasters that go on with no matter what we do. But at the end, I'm not so sure if I heard a lot of people say, oh, they got to hit rock bottom. I don't know if that's the case.
See, and a lot of
again.
times rock bottom is they don't make it.
Yeah.
And so, that's a tough
What is
call.
rock? What is rock bottom?
Right.
I mean.
And as a parent too, we have to be able to, what you may say worked for you,
Right.
I might not be able to do that. I might not be able to live with that.
Right.
That may not work for my child. So I have to be able to live with what I'm doing
Kind of
as
like
well.
the drug itself. People, different substances attack and affect people differently,
Right, and that's why we say,
And so
I can't.
same thing with the recovery and the effects that we have on our parents. It's
Right.
the same, you have that same effect. What affects me may not affect you that way. So, some different realizations there.
Right, and that's why I can't give you advice.
No.
I can just say, well, when
This is
this
what
was
I
happening with me,
did, yeah.
this is what I did that worked. And like I said, just bringing education to the table was a huge.
Well, even when you do get advice, a lot of times you don't follow it. You follow your heart a lot of times. I mean, I can get advice, and I've had advice in the past, and I'm like, yeah, okay, well, maybe I can modify that a little bit, to fit my own.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know if, even as a counselor, I still have my own being that I can make up my own mind and say, I don't know if that's going to work. Mostly because you know your child more than anybody else does. So,
And that can be a disadvantage too,
Yeah.
because that's that
Yeah.
emotional hook that they get into you, that you are just hooked to them, and
Yeah.
it can be, but without support,
Right.
without somebody coming alongside you going, hey, this is the right thing to do. You are doing the right thing. This is healthy. And without that support, you've got that hook in your heart,
Right.
and it's just a killer.
Right.
It's just so tough to
Yeah.
do the right thing sometime.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. When education helps you in that place where, as a parent, you've been nurturing them from the time that they were born, and especially for a woman, when you've given birth to this little baby and you've protected them, and you've been doing all these things to keep them safe and keep them out of harm's way and make things right, and sometimes make things better than they were for you. But so when you come into Al-Anon or to PAL and learning what's a better way, it feels counterintuitive. I won't say almost. It pretty much does feel counterintuitive. So you need that support of other people to come along and say, this really is the right way. This really is truth.
Yep.
And we want to do what's best for them. We
Sure.
want them to grow. I have a book that I'm reading for my 8-year-old, how to raise an adult. And that's what we need to be doing, raising adults, not raising children.
I was told once, in the recovery world, they call them kids. And even though they're not kids, they could be in their 30s or 40s, but they are kids because they're basically so needy, and they need people to help them, that they are literally, it doesn't matter what age they are, they're kids.
Well, and that brings us to one of our lessons. Actually, it's one of our first lessons in PAL is about delayed emotional growth. And for a big population of addicts, they've been using since they were very young.
Yeah.
And that has delayed their emotional growth. And so you're dealing with that. So you get in that habit of dealing with these little kid tantrums, and you're dealing with them like a child, and you continue to see them as a child, and then you've just got into that caretaking role again,
You
taking
see that
over
in
for
recovery
them.
all the time.
Right.
Yeah, it's very common. So you have like different criteria, lesson plans?
Yes.
And so when you come to there, so I'm a brand new person, I
Okay.
come over and I sit down, and so I'm going to be given a lesson plan, and then it's open forum, or how does that work?
Well, the first thing we like to do is a part of our protocol is to always share the PAL preamble. It just tells about who we are, that we're just parents. We're parents working together. We're volunteers. We have, I think, over 300 volunteers in the United States now. And this is a program we tell them about the program, that it's for parents who are dealing with a son or daughter battling addiction, and even maybe if you're a spouse and you feel like you're having to parent a partner because they have an addiction issue. So, and we stress too that the program is for 18 and older. And then we have two parts of the meeting, the educational and an opportunity to share. And then we let them know that this is a safe place. What you share in that meeting, we can be on a first name basis. I don't need to know your last name.
Right.
I don't need to know where you work or anything about you, but you can come there and you can share. And what's said in there stays in there. And then everyone experiences this journey at their own pace. Mm-hmm. So it's not about a set curriculum. We do have 9 basic lessons. I hope I've said that right.
Yeah.
And a couple supplements. And then we do other things. We do have some educational movies. We have a movie called Pleasure Unwoven that we like to look at. And it's a man who was he was a flight surgeon in the United States Navy for 10 years, and he became addicted to opioids. And he did a lot of research and studied about addiction, and so there's a lot of tools. Mm-hmm. We'll share with that preamble. We are a faith-based organization. We do believe in a higher power. Mm-hmm. We may open with a prayer and close with a prayer, but it's not a Bible study. Then we have a chance to go over the curriculum, and we can look at that. Someone will read through it. We'll take turns reading through it. We have time where people want to comment or ask mm-hmm. questions, and then we'll go to that time when they can share about what's going on in their life, and if anybody needs help, needs a suggestion, or...
How long does the meetings usually last?
It's an hour and a half. We start at 6 and we close at 7:30, and we are there every Monday, 6 o'clock. You can go to the website, www.palgroup.org, and you can find a meeting anywhere in most anywhere in the United States. We're hoping to be, that's the goal of PAL, is to be have a PAL meeting available to anybody that needs it. But we post on our website if we're not going to be meeting, and we try to let our people know that have been coming regularly. So, that's pretty much how it works.
And did we get the address up where we're at, and phone number and all the contact information? So that's all on the...
and the contact information, I'll give you that phone number if you'd like. That's a local number. That's 778-0379.
And that will be also on our site.
Okay.
So that will be all there. So anybody who wants to contact you or seek out any kind of help, you've given them a lot of information, able to give them a hand up. And hopefully, like I said, if that's happening within your family, reach out to either PAL or somebody else. But you need help, and you need to talk to somebody about it. Patricia, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. Is there any other closing comments you want to give, or it wasn't that bad now, was it?
No, it wasn't that bad at all.
Good.
No, not at all. I'm just looking down here at this one lesson, this mm-hmm. first lesson actually, and there's an equation here. C equals A plus NA, and that's change equals an awareness of the problem combined with the practice of new actions over the course of time. And that's what PAL's about, bringing an awareness, and over a course of time. You might be able to read our book that's written by our founder, which is called The 4 Seasons of Addiction for Parents. And you can read that book in, I don't know, a week, a day, whatever. But it takes a long time for that to filter down into your heart and your spirit and to be able to respond. So it takes time, and it takes a lot of practice learning these new habits.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Prescott. Good Friday. I hope everybody has a blessed Easter. And until next Friday, Prescott Talks. Glenn Martin, your host. Thank you so much.